Today we're going to be doing a quick video talking about some of the pros and the cons of uplimbing, or kind of trimming up some of the branches on a tree. So whether it's a giant cedar tree, whether it's some sort of evergreen, deciduous tree, fruit tree, nut tree, there's so many different kind of trees that you could do this with. But what are some of the factors that go into whether you should trim up some of those branches and expose kind of that trunk and some of that space that's under there versus leaving the natural beauty and keeping those branches low. So hopefully this video is helpful for you. Let's see what's going to happen. So when you look at a tree and you have look at the skirt, or kind of where those limbs come down at the bottom of the tree, you have the trunk, which is kind of like the legs, and then you might have the skirt that's kind of hiding part of the legs, or depending on how high that skirt is, you might have a high skirt, low skirt. So there's some, yeah, that's just some terminology that's out there. Anyway, well, with a tree like what I have behind me, I've got a skirt it's a long skirt. It's like a long dress going all the way down to the ground. You can't even see the leg, the trunk of this tree behind me. And so we're going to be talking today about should you raise that skirt? Should you kind of get it so you can see some of that trunk, some of the different benefits of what that will do to the yard and some of the aspects around there? Or do you leave that thing low and some of the benefits that come from having a long or low skirt on a tree? And so this is a bigger factor with some evergreens, some large like park deciduous trees, things that might have really wide branches and be really tall. There's some different opportunities you have to expose what could be a very beautiful trunk versus not. So this is the question I've been wrestling with for a few years, and today I'm kind of at that spot where I think I'm ready to pull the trigger and make some changes here. So let me walk you through a couple of the decisions, and hopefully this is helpful for you. But this has been a tough one for me. I know that once I cut those limbs off, they don't grow back. You can't go and you know, hope in a couple years that they will kind of start growing out and you'll be able to have those. But you know, up at top you'll get some new limbs. There's some different things that'll happen up there, but a tree like this, once you cut those limbs off, the decision is done. So you got to be really wise about what you do. So what I've got here with this tree, this is a cedar tree, beautiful cedar tree. It's probably about 80 feet tall. And when I moved in here years ago, it was maybe half the size, and then this skirt was much more narrow. In fact, 2 years ago I built the shed. So it was, man, it might have been slightly less than 2 years ago. When I built this shed, so you can see right about here is the end of this carport. You see that carport where I've got tools and riding lawnmowers back there? Well, this skirt was kind of going up through here. I knew it was going to grow wider. I didn't know how fast it would take to grow and kind of start hitting the actual shed there. But as this thing was over the last 2 years, this thing got wider and it does continue to grow taller. Same thing over here. I've got, in fact, I've got a couple apple trees. I used to be able to drive a car over here. I'll take you there in a second and show you kind of what that looks like. But this tree is going wider. It's going wider this way. It's creeping out into the grass more. And there's some problems with that I think would be wonderful to have the skirt lifted. However, there's some drawbacks. So let's start with the drawbacks and talk about what are the benefits of having a low skirt on a tree like this. Number one is privacy. In my particular yard, I've got my neighbors over there, and you know, so this tree right here, it brings a lot of privacy when we're doing, you know, volleyball parties or gatherings, or just hanging out. I can't see even a couple neighbors over. It provides a natural barrier visibly, and just kind of gives us a little bit more of that kind of that private park-like feel. So there's a privacy thing with neighbors, and I love my neighbors. I have great neighbors, but that's an important factor. In fact, years ago we had some neighbors who lived here. This is before the current neighbors, and right over kind of where the shed is here, there was one of those like park homes. It's like a 400 square foot. It's not an RV, but it's like a trailer. The trailer was parked right next to our fence, and that over that way is where our house is, on our back patio. And it was high enough where the windows looking out of that thing went right into our yard. And we're like, oh no, this is bad. What do we do about this? Now, thankfully, I think it was within a year, the people that were gonna live in there, they moved or whatever, but the situation worked out to where that thing went away, and my heart was relieved. I'm like, that was almost one of those kind of things you're like, do I need to move away from here? Is this too much? Because it was totally in our face. Well, a tree like this, guarantees, because it's on our property line, it's on our area, it guarantees that we're going to have that barrier there. So there's a benefit to that. So privacy is a big one. A second one, and this probably actually is more of my number one the last several years. I have a lot of junk in my life. Stuff that I don't necessarily want to throw away. In fact, my wife and I, we kind of joke back and forth with each other. I'm like, why are you saving that stuff? Why do you have that stuff? Well, I've got my own junk that I save, and I have different places I hide it. But this tree right here, there's a lot of junk under there. Let me take you over there and show you what I've got. And when you're out here having a party, we have, you know, people coming over playing volleyball. We're just hanging out, you know. Beautiful yard. Oh, Andy, you've got just an awesome yard. It's wonderful. It's so green back there. Well, if you look behind the tree, you're going to see a little bit different story. So let me show you one of the benefits of having a low skirt and what you can hide behind it. Come with me. Again, beautiful tree. And you can see here, you know, I've got some stuff that's visible here, but generally you don't see much, right? And then you're like, wait, is that blue? That looks like blue tarp or something. Well, we keep swinging around here. This is the east side of the tree. The more you come here, you're like, oh, okay. Okay, well, there's a little stuff. You got a yard waste bin. You got a trailer for the lawn tractor. It's getting bad. What is under here? Stuff you would never imagine. There's a green slide. In fact, yesterday, this green slide was tipped over. I lifted it up, and there was a bunny home with a little bunny in there. And the bunny's now somewhere else. I did not kill it. It ran away, but I've got bricks, and I know I've had rabbits living in these bricks. There's a pig feeder from when I had hogs years ago, propane tanks, tarps. What is that? Old fences, an RV, not an RV, an RC car jump. I have to talk to I got pallets. Now, this is not all my junk. Some of this is other people's junk. I got crab buoys. You can just see, I mean, there's so much stuff back here. Chimney, I mean, what do I need this for? Years ago, it looks like the kids started to try to make a house, but look at that bark on this tree. Look at this. Let's come around here. Look at this thing. That is just beautiful. You have a nice thick trunk, and if I can go and eliminate a few of these branches and open this thing up, that becomes just an eye feature of the yard here that would really add a lot. Now, immediately I'm gonna have to get rid of this junk and kind of make this area look nice, but you can maybe envision, it's kind of like those old growth forests. Now, this is nowhere near that size of tree, but again, to be able to see that would just add a beauty. And after a year or so of having those limbs cut, you know, that'll kind of heal over and look nice, but kind of a cool feature. So again, the privacy and then the privacy of the junk back there, so hiding stuff, are two major benefits of keeping this skirt low. A third benefit is just the natural beauty of having this kind of this tree. So whether you've got a deciduous tree, I'll show you a couple in just a moment, or an evergreen tree that has a real nice kind of that low limbs, it's beautiful, and it will continue to be beautiful. Those limbs there are healthy. In fact, with a cedar tree and a lot of trees like this, the limbs kind of really go kind of down and just kind of swoop down and kind of just create a beautiful look. And so it's kind of a cool thing. It keeps the weeds out of that area, you know, so the droppings there. So again, we got privacy, we've got kind of, it's a great natural barrier to hide things. It looks nice. So those are a couple factors to really chew on. Now, some of the benefits of taking this thing up, we talked about a moment ago, the trunk and how you just see that beauty. And then a second one is, and you see this, there's a couple apple trees back here. Those apple trees back there, they get a lot of sunlight in the morning time, and then in the afternoon, the more this tree kind of grows wider and taller, I mean, the height isn't so much an issue, but as it grows a little bit wider, those lower limbs are encroaching on what happens with the sun hitting this direction. And so I do want a lot of sun hitting there, and so if I could kind of raise this up, you know, 15-20 feet potentially, I will see a lot more sun getting through, hitting those smaller apple trees that I kind of prune low, and even some of the blueberry bushes and rhubarb and things like that. And then I have a little bit more garden area against that fence that I could utilize with a little bit more sunlight. So that's going to be a factor of what it will do for the sunlight in those spots. Now, another factor with this is it opens up, whether you're mowing the lawn. Every time I go and mow the lawn in this area, I can only get so close without kind of like getting mauled by those limbs. I've got other trees around here where I'm uplimbing, whether it's nut trees or even fruit trees, and I do that so that I can get my lawnmower, my riding mower or push mower, I can get it under there and not get knocked in the head or have to duck all the time, things like that. So let me show you a couple other trees that uplimbing really makes a factor in, not so much a giant evergreen, but just some other styles of trees. So let's take a look and see how maybe uplimbing could help in some other trees. These are, in fact, there is 4 of these. These are nut trees, so these are filberts, also known as hazelnuts. And I put these in several years ago. They're getting nice size, but one of the things I'm seeing is that as I go and mow around these circles, I do have to dodge some of these lower hanging limbs. And so I've already started trimming up a little bit each year, and there's a few of these that probably even next winter I might take, that one on the left, the one on the right, I might get rid of those 2 just so I have a little bit more clearance and airflow under there. Here's a great example. I probably should have done this last year, but this lowest one right here, just uplimbing and just kind of raising the canopy a little bit, raising the skirt there of that tree will open up so I can get under there pretty well. These are called American sycamore trees, and these American sycamore trees, they are huge. A couple years ago, the power company came through and topped them, and they've kind of regrown their shape. We'll see how much longer they let them go, but it has beautiful trunks, both of these do. And I've lifted the canopy, lifted the skirt up some, and I've got a few more of these. One of the things that I'm having to chew on, and this is actually one of the negatives too, is you got some good climbing trees that by taking the branches up, people can't climb them. And if you've got kids, there's nothing like climbing a tree. It's one of God's natural playgrounds. So you can see by just having limbs cut up, I can walk under here, I can mow. However, it's kind of hard to get up there if you want to climb this tree. And as this tree gets bigger, it's a great one for climbing. Then again, over here, one of the things I did a few years ago when I did cut a couple of the branches off, I went ahead and left the knob there on the back side so that if I wanted to, or if kids wanted to climb, they could get up there and keep going. But again, I've got a couple of these long ones that would probably be good for air circulation. Another benefit of uplimbing is I get a lot of moss through my grass, and by having a lot of shade from these trees, these are on the south side, the trees are, so all of this area here gets a lot of moss on the north side of those trees because there's so much shade throughout most of the growing season. So again, there's a beauty by having that skirt up with the trunks, with the airflow, with the being able to walk or mow underneath there. However, you do lose some different shape. So even cutting up some of the branches on the lower branches here, as I mow my grass, I come through and hit this right through here. So, over time, taking up a couple of those limbs will give me a little more space for getting underneath. So prior to cutting something like this, prior to making that decision, one of the things I really encourage you to do is go drive around your community. Look at similar type of trees. So in this case, I've got the cedar tree behind me, and I've got here in the Seattle suburbs, northwest here, I've got a lot of cedar trees that grow all over the place. And so when I drive around different houses or businesses or parks, things like that, there's a lot of examples of cedar trees that are cut at different heights. And I can go through and look and see, okay, that trunk is beautiful. Having that that skirt raised up 30 feet or 40 feet just provides a lot of light and just exposure to the things around there and opportunities you can have there. But there's also some of I saw one tree that they went super high up, and then they have this little tiny like crown, and I'm like, that's not even, that just doesn't look right. Maybe if the tree was another 40, 50 feet tall, it would kind of proportionally look right. So you got to kind of weigh that, how high do you go? Do you do a little bit each year or what? So one of the things that I did before I went and pulled the trigger, and in fact I'm still kicking this around as I even make this video, but how will this thing look? Imagining what it'll look like at different heights, and kind of thinking through losing the privacy and losing some of the opportunity to hide things, getting the sunlight through there, all of that. What do I think? So definitely before you go around and lift up the skirt, kind of trim it up some, go ahead and see what's going on in the community. Go ahead and see what's going on and evaluate that. So I'm gonna go ahead, I've got a yard waste bin that gets picked up once a week, and most of my stuff I actually compost around the yard, but I usually have enough limbs or other things that I just haven't stopped doing that. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a couple branches off, and we'll have an update video coming in and kind of talk about some of the factors on this. But I'm gonna go ahead and raise it up a little bit on the backside and start getting some area where I can walk through there. Chew on this. There'll be a second part where I'll go through and I'll show you what I've ended up with. I'll get rid of some junk, kind of take you through that process of how I cut those branches and decide that. Hopefully this is helpful. If you got some questions or input on this decision and kind of the things that go on that you've experienced, share those in the comments. Maybe you will actually convince me to not touch my tree, to leave it as it is. But I think I'm gonna go ahead and bring that up about 20 feet, but we'll see. Stay tuned in for another video soon, and you'll see what happens. Have a good life.